All right, let's dive right in. We're not here to just skim through the plots and characters from your Class 10 English syllabus. Nope. Today, we're going to unlock the really powerful universal themes that tie all these incredible stories and poems together. It's going to give you a whole new way of looking at them. So let's get started. So, here's the plan. We're going to take a journey through 5 main ideas. We'll kick things off with faith, struggle, and freedom. Then we'll explore the 2 very different faces of nature. After that, we'll get into the destructive power of our own emotions, then take a hard right turn into something a little more fun, humor. And finally, we'll wrap it all up in a neat little literary toolkit to really help you nail it.
Okay, so our first big theme is all about hope. But we're looking at it through 2 totally different lenses. We've got one character whose hope is, all about the divine, and another whose hope was hammered out over decades and decades of human struggle. On one hand, you've got Lencho from A Letter to God. He's a simple farmer with this just unshakable faith. And on the other hand, we have Nelson Mandela, a freedom fighter who went up against an entire system of oppression. 2 guys, 2 completely different worlds, but both are driven by this incredibly powerful hope for something better.
Wow. This quote right here, it's just sheer devastation. This is the exact moment Lencho's entire world just falls apart. A crazy hailstorm has just completely wiped out his harvest, the one thing his family needed to survive. Everything gone. He's left completely and utterly desperate. So, in this moment of total ruin, what does he do? He doesn't turn to his friends, his neighbors, or any officials. Nope. He has one single, unwavering source of hope: God. And his faith is so powerful, so absolute, that he does something pretty wild. He sits down and writes a letter, addressed directly to God, asking for 100 pesos to see his family through. Okay, let's switch gears to our second story of hope. Now, to really get what Mandela was up against, you have to understand this one word: apartheid. This wasn't just, prejudice. This was a brutal, state-sponsored political system in South Africa designed to separate people based on their race. It was the law. And what's just staggering here is the sheer scale of the sacrifice. Lencho's crisis was one terrible event. Mandela's struggle? That was a lifelong battle. He spent nearly 30 years in prison for his fight against the injustice of apartheid. Just think about that for a second. 30 years. And this quote, it just captures his entire philosophy perfectly. For Mandela, courage wasn't about not being afraid. Of course he felt fear. It was about looking that fear right in the eye and beating it. His courage didn't come from some divine hope, but from the resilience and the sacrifice of his comrades, a deeply, profoundly human source of strength.
So we just saw how nature, in the form of a hailstorm, was this unbelievably destructive force in Lencho's life. But in these texts, nature kind of has 2 faces. It can be this fierce destroyer, for sure, but it can also be a subtle, gentle healer. In Robert Frost's poem Dust of Snow, we see nature as the healer. And the setup is so simple. The poet is having a really, really bad day. Then a crow, an animal we usually see as a bad sign, just happens to shake a little bit of snow down on him. And that tiny, seemingly meaningless moment, it completely flips his perspective and saves the rest of his day. It's just a beautiful, quiet little scene. But, and it's a big but, as we know all too well from Lencho's story, that's only one side of the coin. The very same natural world that can give you a gentle dusting of snow can also unleash a storm of ice that just destroys lives and livelihoods. Putting them side by side like this is just so powerful. On the left, you've got this light, healing snow from Dust of Snow that saves a day. And on the right, you've got the heavy, violent hailstorm from A Letter to God that basically threatens a life. It's the same element, right? Frozen water, but with 2 completely different impacts, showing the whole incredible range of nature's power. Okay, so we've looked at the external world, at faith, at nature. Now let's turn that lens inward. Our next theme digs into the internal world of human emotion, and specifically, how feelings like desire and hatred can be every bit as destructive as that hailstorm. Now, to really get this next poem, we need to understand a key literary tool: symbolism. It's pretty simple, really. It's just when an author uses something concrete, like, say, fire, to represent a much bigger, abstract idea, like desire. Robert Frost is an absolute master at this, and he uses it with devastating effect in his poem Fire and Ice.
So the poem kicks off with this simple debate. Will the world end in fire, or will it end in ice? But here's the catch. Frost isn't talking about a literal apocalypse. For him, fire and ice are really powerful symbols for two of our most destructive human emotions. And here's the breakdown. Fire stands for all our hot emotions, that unchecked desire, greed, lust. It's this force that just burns and consumes everything in a flash. Ice, on the other hand, symbolizes our cold emotions, hatred, indifference, cruelty. It's a slow, silent kind of destruction that just freezes the world from the inside out. And for Frost, either one would be more than enough to do the job.
All right, take a deep breath. After all that heavy existential stuff, we're going to do a complete 180. We are shifting gears from the deeply serious to the absurdly comical with the poem How to Tell Wild Animals. This poem gives us a very, unique kind of field guide.
I mean, this chart just perfectly captures the poem's dark humor. So how do you identify an Asian lion? Simple. It roars at you right as you're dying. A Bengal tiger? Well, if it eats you, you'll know. The whole joke is that the only way to identify these animals is to be in a situation where you're probably not going to survive. From the bone-crushing bear hug to the fake tears of a crocodile, the poem turns these deadly situations into something just hilariously memorable. Okay, we've been on quite the journey, right? We've gone through faith, nature, deep human emotions, and even some dark comedy. So let's pull all these threads together into one final, super practical toolkit that's going to help you get ready for your exams. So, what do we got? We definitely saw irony. I mean, Lencho calls the very people who helped him a bunch of crooks. It's classic. We saw symbolism, with Frost's fire and ice standing in for desire and hate. We saw juxtaposition, when we put Lencho's simple faith right up against Mandela's epic struggle. We even found humor in mortal danger. And that one thread tying it all together? It's hope. Whether it's Lencho's pure faith, Mandela's hard-won freedom, or just the poet's quiet moment of relief from a dusting of snow. And that brings us to one last thing to think about. From the absolute depths of a 30-year prison sentence to a silly poem about a bear hug, your syllabus covers this incredible range of what it's like to be alive. So the real question is this: how do all these different texts, through both the biggest struggles and the silliest jokes, show us the complex, beautiful, and sometimes contradictory reality of what it means to be human? Thanks for joining me.